Welcome to Smokey Bear Live. My name is Matt Grubbs and I'll be guiding you through the next hour of all sorts of great stuff that we have to talk about. This program is being brought to you by New Mexico's PBS stations and KOB4, also by the USDA Forest Service, which manages almost 193 million acres. That is a ton of land, and all of our other partners. We're webcasting live from the Lincoln National Forest near Capitan, New Mexico. And back there, you see that dip in the mountains. That's called Capitan Gap, and we'll get to why that's important in just a little bit. We're really glad that you could join us. It is a very, very chilly day out here. It's about 35 degrees or so, and we've got a little bit of rain, but we've got a wonderful campfire with us as well. We're going to be talking about Smokey Bear's 75th birthday and the 75th anniversary of Smokey Bear's wildfire prevention ad campaign. It's a very important milestone for us. Today we have a lot of stuff that we're going to learn about, and we're going to tell you about it now. We have the history of the Smokey Bear wildfire prevention ad campaign. Like I said, it's been going on for 75 years and it's pretty well developed. We also, of course, want to give you the story of the living Smokey Bear, who was the symbol of the campaign. And we're going to be talking about fire prevention. You'll see some of the equipment the brave men and women use to fight the fires. We're also going to be talking about the fire danger rating system. That's a very important part of what we're doing today and what experts call the whole spectrum of fire management. Now, like I said, we are live, and that means that you can help us out with what we're doing today. And the way you can do that is by sending us all of your questions. You can do that on the Smokey Bear Live website, which is where a lot of you are watching this right now. You can post a question there. You can also send an email to us. We'll be putting an email address up on your screen, and you can go to our Facebook page as well. You can see we've got Smokey there. We've got a great team of people answering questions for you online. Let's run through who they are. They're John Artley and Jane Lesh, Stacy Lacey, Jody Malazzi, and Mark Thibodeau. They're fire prevention technicians and specialists, and their job is really important. They'll be answering your questions. Even if you don't see us get to it online, you may well get an email from one of them. As I said, we do have Smokey Bear here on the program today. Let's give Smokey a big happy birthday, everyone. Happy birthday, Smokey. He'll be helping Nick Smokovich. That's the guy at the computer there. He's the district forester for the Capitan district here in New Mexico. That's the New Mexico Division of State Forestry. Also, we have some kids here, and they've been standing patiently by, along with Amchad Edwards, who works for the Forest Service. Hey, Amchad, how are you?
Hey, Matt, I'm good. How are you doing?
Great. So these are kids from Capitan Elementary, right?
That's right. That's right.
Excellent. What are you guys going to be doing today?
So we are going to do some career exploration. We're following up on a lesson that happened in their classroom already. We had a Forest Service educator, thanks Thea, who went in and did some work with them. And now today they're going to put on their forest supervisor hat. They're also going to put on their fire suppression team hat and then a fire prevention team hat. And so we're going to go explore those different careers out here in this gigantic classroom that we call a forest.
There could be nothing better than that, it sounds like. You guys ready to have some fun?
Yeah!
Excellent. Thanks so much for coming. We're going to check back with you in a bit, if that's okay.
Sounds good, Matt.
Excellent. All right, have fun. We'll see you guys in a bit.
Bye.
All right, you guys. Well, you've heard us talk a little bit about Smokey's ad campaign. We wanted to give you the history of that, and it started way back during World War II.
In the spring of 1942, a Japanese submarine bombed an oil field near Santa Barbara, California, which was close by the Los Padres National Forest. This raised concerns about future attacks that could easily set off wildfires. The protection of forest resources became a matter of national importance during World War II. It's estimated that the war effort used enough lumber to construct 9.5 million average-sized houses. That's more houses than the entire state of New York today. To help protect our nation's forest resources, the USDA Forest Service organized the Cooperative Forest Fire Prevention Program with the Wartime Advertising Council, that's now known as the Ad Council, and the National Association of Foresters in 1942. In 1943, Bambi was temporarily loaned from Disney to spread the fire prevention message. Since Bambi was so popular with the public, it was decided to pick another animal for fire prevention messaging. A black bear was picked because it's native to the United States and it commands authority and respect while still being lovable. Albert Stahl illustrated the first bear, and it has been Smokey ever since. Smokey's message of wildfire prevention is the center of the longest-running public service announcement campaign in our nation's history.
Well, I am cold, you guys. Thankfully, we have a wonderful campfire built here and a couple of special guests. We want to start first with Ryan Whitaker. He works for the Forest Service. He's a fire staff officer. There is nothing better than this.
Yeah, Matt, it's nice to be around a nice warm campfire on a day like today. We've done it well and had rocks around the ring, keep the coals from going outside the campfire, and then we've got no vegetation around it, and we've also got a watering shovel close.
That's terrific. Excellent. This is a lot different, I'm assuming, from the day in 1950 when Smokey came wandering out of those mountains.
It is, well, obviously, with the moisture, it sure is. But back then it was burning pretty hot. It was in our June, our typical fire season. It was a hot day. Had a very active fire. We actually had some firefighters get burned over on that fire as well, so we were lucky to not lose anybody. And then we had the cub that was found by the crew that's here with us as well, and we've had Smokey Bear come along.
That's great. That's the reason we're all here.
It is.
We're going to talk to you a little bit later, but we wanted to get to our other special guest, who is Adolf Zamora. He is from the Taos Pueblo, and I'm going to scoot over here. Thank you so much for coming in.
Okay, thank you.
I wanted to know a little bit. You were a member of the fire crew that was here when Smokey came out of those mountains. What do you remember about that day?
Yeah, when we came here from the other camp to here, and we stay one night, and we go out in the morning, early in the morning. And when we got up there at the fire, we were supposed to find a hot spot and mop it up, clear out, no smoke.
Okay.
And when we were doing that, two guys from forestry, one from El Pueblo, he's a ranger too,
Okay.
and one from Boise, Idaho, he was with him. So they were checking the hot spots, and I saw him passing through, and little later, they called me, "Hey, Adolf, call the boys." And I did. I ran over in little ways, and I called the boys, and 4 guys came up to it, there, where they were. And I ran over to, and what is it? I told him.
Uh-huh.
And he pointed the jacket. It was his jacket. Telesford Trujillo's jacket was on the ground,
Okay.
and that little cup was covered. And he picked it up, and he faced it to me, and I saw him, and he gave it to me, and I looked at him. His blisters were all over his hands, feet.
We saw that. He had been walking through that fire to get out to you?
No, they spotted.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, on the ashes,
I see.
He was going barely, and then Telesford ran over with his jacket and covered over.
Wow.
So he catch it right there.
So you actually got to hold the real live Smokey Bear.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Uh-huh.
You said his paws were and his feet were really badly burned.
Yeah, he got blisters all over on his hand.
Wow.
All over. Yeah.
That's pretty amazing. I also wanted to ask you about the Taos Snowballs. That was the name of your crew. We haven't gotten to this yet in our program. They're hot shots. They do a lot of hiking around and putting out fires and, like you said, mopping up.
Yeah.
How did you come up with the name for Taos Snowballs?
When we were in Alamogordo, we went with Tausenyo, the first name we met. And the town guys, Spanish guys,
Yeah.
called the same way, Tausenyo.
Okay.
So there are two firefighting crew. So when they were telling about us, the Tausenyos.
The Tausenyos?
And
Yeah.
this guy, "Hey, what?" He said. He answered, and they don't know which
They didn't know you. So they mistook Tao's snowball for Tausenyo?
We didn't have no snowballs yet, just Tausenyo. And these other guys got Tausenyos too. So we're in two groups. So we were in Alamogordo. When we were going home, they fed us in a cafe.
Okay.
And there, two rangers were sitting on a chair, and one stand up and, you know, ask our boss, crew boss. He was an employee too.
Okay.
Yeah, so he went up there and talked to him. And I don't know, we just call ourselves Tausenos. So, and that guy told us, you know, that Lupe Martinez,
Okay.
you better change your name. You got two.
You can't have the same ones.
Yeah. So.
So then you became the Snowballs. Well, we want to thank you so much.
And anyway, in a way, it was cloudy and started to snow. Our boss, Ed Instrom, was running the office.
Okay.
We got up, we stopped the bus, you know, the bus driver stopped the bus and get out. And we're the last one, me and Dalrina and that Instrom, the boss. And the boss said, how about the snow? He mentioned it was starting snowing. And Dal said, no, the snowballs. That's why we got it.
That's amazing.
Up there.
That's
and we're
terrific.
going home. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming here and sharing with us the story of being with Smokey at the beginning of his life. We really appreciate that. And thanks for your work. We'll talk to you later.
Okay.
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 All right. Well, the reason we're in Capitan is, of course, Smokey. And there's another important thing involving Smokey that's going on here. That's the Smokey Bear Historic Park. And it is run by Benny Long. Thanks for coming in. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. A little chilly, but it's
Just
a
a
wonderful
touch.
place to be.
It really is. So we just heard from Adolf Zamora about actually finding Smokey and his crew, the Taos Snowballs, who saw Smokey and put a jacket over him to protect him. That was just the beginning of his story. Can you pick it up for us?
Well, we can. Once Smokey was brought down from the fire, they brought him to Ray Bell, who was a game and fish warden. Ray and his family nursed Smokey back to health the best that they could. Later on, they took Smokey to Santa Fe to a veterinarian called Edwin Smith, where he finished the job of bringing him back to health the best they could. At that time, they actually flew him to Washington, D.C., and he stayed there for 26 years.
That's a long life for a bear.
It is. So most bears in the wild live anywhere from 20 to 25 years.
Okay.
So that just gives you an idea of how long and how happy he was and well taken care of.
And he had people looking out for him from day one, it sounds like.
He did, yes, sir. Even in Washington, he was very well received. A lot of movie stars, Roy Rogers, Hopalong Cassidy all made tours with him. So yes, he was there, but he wasn't ever domesticated either. That's a question we get a lot. Was he domesticated? And he wasn't. They tried to handle him the least amount of time as possible.
To let him be a bear.
Yes, exactly.
Well, in Capitan, you have the Smokey Bear Historic Park, and you celebrate Smokey. That's actually where he was laid to rest.
Yes, sir.
What kinds of things can people learn there?
We do have a 10-minute video that plays on the quarter hour on the history of Smokey and fire ecology.
Okay.
We have fire prevention, firefighting, fire behavior. We have nostalgic exhibits on how the ad campaign began in 1944, how he evolved from the poster icon to the living symbol of fire prevention in 1950. We have miscellaneous exhibits. We have a wonderful 2-acre park hosting 6 of the 7 vegetative life zones of New Mexico. We have Smokey's burial site, and we also have the brand new New Mexico Wildland Fallen Firefighter Memorial.
It's very important as we talk about the work that the Forest Service does.
Yes,
A lot
sir.
of brave women and men have really sacrificed for us.
Yes, they have paid the ultimate price to keep our forests safe and our homes and lives and property.
Excellent.
So it was a great place to put it.
Okay, well, Benny, we want to answer some questions. We've had students and teachers from around the country sending in questions to us. Let's walk over and see what they're
All right.
asking us. And of course, we're going to check in with Nick Smokovich. Nick, how you doing?
Good, thank you. Yeah, we're getting a lot of great questions here from students from all over. And the first one I selected was from Mrs. Wunderlich's fourth grade class from Military Heights from Roswell, New Mexico. And their question was, how large was the fire back in 1950 when Smokey was found?
Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah.
Ryan, do you know about that?
It was, from what I understand, it was about 17 to 18,000 acres is what that fire size was.
Now, relative to what you guys fight, is that a big fire?
That would be classified as a big fire. Nowadays, we're getting some much bigger fires than that, but especially back then, that was a large fire.
Okay. And have these hills burned since then?
They have. We had a fire in 2004, and then actually again recently it's burned. But in 2004 was the Pepin fire, and that one got, I want to say it was like 50,000 or something. It got much bigger.
That's a very big fire. I think we have time for another question. Who else do we have?
We had a student, there wasn't a particular name, but a student made a good question. What do I do if I see smoke? What do I do to report it?
Okay.
And so one of the things that we always tell people is don't try to involve yourself directly with putting out the fire. If it's something like a fire extinguisher, that's fine. In your home, those are all good things. But the main thing is to report that fire. Call 911. Let the professionals know that there's a fire so that they can start responding right away. And make sure you give them a great location of where it's at, because with forest fires or wildfires in general, they can be very remote areas, and it's hard to understand where to respond to. So a mile marker along a road or a place name for a mountain or stream is very helpful.
Wonderful. Well, you guys have a lot of work left to do, so we're going to check back with you in a little bit. We've gathered a bunch of facts about Smokey Bear that you might not know, and we wanted to show you one of those right now. Fire prevention is a very big reason of why we're out here today, and the Forest Service has gotten pretty good at it over the years. We wanted to start talking about that. This is my buddy Eric Solomon. Eric, how are you?
Oh, good. How are you, sir?
Great, thank you very much. He works with the Forest Service, and Eric, the women and men on the front lines, a lot of them are called fire prevention technicians.
Correct, yeah.
What do they do?
So the primary mission for fire prevention technicians is to eliminate or reduce the unwanted wildland fire ignitions on the forest. So we do that in a variety of ways, and really the most common way that we do that is we go out into the forest and we patrol. Our fire prevention technicians will tie in with folks that are recreating, folks that are camping. They'll offer them guidance, education on how to be responsible, how to be safe. One of our main focuses would be for campfires. So we want to teach those folks a safe location to build a campfire, a safe way to maintain that campfire, and most importantly, the best way to put it out before they leave.
Okay.
So
if they see something, can they call for help?
Absolutely, yeah. If you see something in the forest, a fire, like call 911 and we'll come out and we'll respond. Another way that our prevention technicians spread that message is when they're not in the forest, they'll be out, they'll be doing public education events, visiting schools, teaching children how to be safe and responsible as well. And also, we also do hazardous fuels reductions, and we'll work with communities on how to make their communities more fire resilient.
Okay, getting rid of small little, you call them fuels, it sounds like, but those are small trees, brush, anything that'll burn?
Yeah, so we would talk about, cured and dead grasses, brush that is adjacent to these forest communities, and try to remove those to make those more resilient and make it safer for firefighters to suppress a fire if it comes to that.
Okay. There's a lot you can do. Can you tell us what a typical day might look like?
Sure, so fire prevention technicians' typical day will start at a fire station or a fire center, and the first thing they're going to do is they're going to look at their truck and their equipment. They're going to make sure that their vehicle's in good working order, all of their gear is ready to go in case they get a fire, and then most of our prevention technicians are frontline firefighters as well. So physical fitness is huge. They have to be in shape, they have to be able to do the job. Wildland firefighting is extremely difficult. So they'll have a physical training regimen that they do. A lot of times crews will train together. They'll do runs, they'll do hikes, they'll do suppression drills, lifting weights, anything aerobic to get them in shape so that they can do that job. After that, they'll have a really specific briefing, very in-depth briefing. It'll have to do with weather, the situation report, how many fires are burning in the area, what resources are available, what they can expect. They're going to make plans. They're going to all know who's patrolling where, and if we get a fire, they'll have a plan. They'll have something in place.
There's so much communicating with each other. That sounds like a big part of it.
There is, yes, definitely. That's huge.
Well, thanks for sharing that with us. Fire prevention, as you know, is something that's very near and dear to Smokey's heart. In fact, we have a video of Smokey helping out that we wanted to show you. It takes a lot of equipment to prevent fires and to fight them. And Eric, it starts off with the truck right here.
Yes, absolutely. So this is one of our typical prevention vehicles. You can see it's small, it's a pickup truck, but it has a 70-gallon tank and a pretty powerful pump here. So if our prevention technicians are out and they find a fire or an abandoned campfire, they have the ability to suppress that. So I wanted to show just some of the basic gear that most of our folks will carry in their vehicles. Which starts with our personal protective equipment. We carry line gear, helmets, fire-resistant clothing. Many of our prevention technicians, as I said, are frontline firefighters, and when they're responding to an incident, they can take on that role of either incident commander, perhaps a public information officer, a fire investigator, or they could be a part of more of the management of the fire. So I wanted to kind of show some of the items that we have. Starting on this side, you know, one of our things, if you're going to be the incident commander or work on this fire, you're going to have to know where everybody's at. So you know who's coming to your fire, you know what you've ordered. When they get there, you're going to want to write down who they are, where they're at, have that accountability, it's safety. So that's really first and foremost. The other things that we carry would be stuff that we have in their packs, you know, headlamps, protective gloves, binoculars, first aid kits. We have flagging here that you can flag hazards, whether it be a hazard tree, something to watch out for like a swarm of bees, or you just want to know how to get back to your engines so that you don't get lost on a fire. Technology is big too in fire prevention, and although technology helps us tremendously, there are some ways before technology was here that we got around. We used compasses. Weather is very important to us as well. Weather is a major driving force on how our fire behavior is going to be, how our fire is going to behave. So I have a couple of things that we had from a while back. The incident meteorologist is going to talk about the belt weather kit here. We have compasses, and then luckily these days we have, you know, GPSs and handheld weather meters. So we use those to make sure that we have those readings, and we can take those readings and know what our fire is going to do and kind of anticipate that behavior while we're fighting the fire.
And you have a lot of backup plans then. So the old way you used to do things, it's now the backup plan.
Correct, yeah. So we use the technology, it's available to us, but if that fails, we have to make sure that we're able to perform those functions still.
Okay.
So, and then as you said, like communications, we carry extra batteries, radios. We have investigation kits here, medical kits. And then of course, no fire vehicle for the Forest Service would be complete without everyone's favorite, the chainsaw. So.
Well, you can see why you guys have to stay in shape. That's a lot to carry. You can do a lot out of this truck, but what if you run into something bigger?
So if we run into something bigger and we can't suppress it with this vehicle, then we're going to start ordering those resources. So, and typically what happens with that is the engines get larger. So
And that's the green truck that we're looking at.
Yeah,
right
so
now.
that's a Forest Service Type 3 fire engine, and that can carry up to 5 people, and it has a much larger tank and a much more powerful pump. So in case we need that, we are able to order those, and we can order as many of those as we need.
Okay, and you can see you can get a lot more done with that.
Absolutely.
Well, I'm sure people have a lot more questions now about what we're doing and what your job is. Nick, how are we doing?
We're doing great. We're getting a lot of well wishers for Smokey Bear and for his birthday, and appreciating the work that he does. But I got one in particular here from Mrs. Pepper's class from Sitka, Alaska. And her class wanted to know, what do you need to practice or study to become a wildland firefighter?
Oh, that's a great one. Eric, what do you need to study?
That is a great question. So we start off with our basic firefighter training. Actually, some of that is available online. That can get you started. To get into the Forest Service and start wildland firefighting, I would suggest visiting those stations, going out, meeting folks, letting them know that you're interested, asking them what they're looking for in a crew member. Make sure that you're physically fit, and really start physically training and start looking at as much fire science as you possibly can.
Sure, and Nick, all the states have their own fire agencies and forestry agencies too.
That's exactly right. There's a lot of good organizations out there that can help. Even your local volunteer fire departments also assist in wildland firefighting, so they need their that support there in your local community too. And I would say while you're still in school, and normally the cutoff for becoming a wildland firefighter is 18. So as you're preparing through the years, you can become a junior firefighter at a volunteer station. But to prepare yourself now while you're in school, definitely we do use math in our calculations. So we need to be able to do computer skills too, and being able to identify plants and having some botany background would be a helpful thing. So
that's a lot to know.
Yeah.
Who else are we hearing from?
We are also hearing from, we had a student here that had asked a question about baby animals and after a fire. I mean, considering that we talked about Smokey as a cub being found in the woods. One thing that talking with wildlife folks is that, you know, baby animals are often seen in the woods, whether we're during a fire or not, and we're not supposed to approach those or handle them because we leave our scent behind on them, and the mothers might not be nearby, just out of sight from us, but we can't find them. So a lot of times those baby animals will be found by their parents, and if left alone, will turn out just fine.
Okay, okay. Well, we have a couple more chances for you all to ask questions, so keep them coming. You can ask us again on the website, Facebook, or on that email address. Here's another fun fact about Smokey. So you might have seen those signs at campgrounds or at fire stations or at visitor centers. They have the arrow and that symbol that tells you what the fire danger is for that day. That's not a guess. In fact, it's far from it. There's an amazing amount that goes into this. And this is the guy who knows about it joining me right now. Tom Bird is a senior forecaster and also something called an incident meteorologist. We'll get to that in a second. But Tom, we're really curious, how do you figure out what the fire rating should be for a day?
Hey Matt, nice to be here. And well, the first thing is, like you said, there's a lot of stuff that goes into that. And it's really important to know what the fire danger rating system basically is. It's a really effective method to let all the land management agencies and the general public know just how likely new fires are, how fast they get big, and how intense they'd be. So we need to know two things, really. We need a good handle on two things. One is the state of the vegetation. How dry are the trees and the bushes and the grasses out there? The second thing we need to know is about the weather. So at 1 o'clock every afternoon, all across the country, there's remote automated weather stations all across the forest that send observations into this system. Those observations go to the National Weather Service offices, and meteorologists there send a forecast back into the system. That system churns on all that information and spits out the maps that we see as the National Fire Danger Rating for the next day.
Okay. I'll admit I didn't pay a whole lot of attention to science when I was in school because I couldn't really make the connection to the real world. That was pretty stupid of me because there's an obvious connection. How do you sort of figure out what to put into that rating as you're gathering all this information from those remote weather stations?
Well, you're right. You know, this is not a guess. You know, there's a lot of science, a very long history of science. In fact, this National Fire Danger Rating System was kind of developed in the 1960s and implemented in the 70s. So we're looking at almost 50 years of tweaking this into what it is today and making it as accurate as it can be. So we're talking a lot of mathematical equations. You know, Nick just talked about firefighters need to know math. Almost everybody needs to know math. So those STEM classes that the kids all know about, the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, really important. So you got the math, the physics, then you got the computer. All that works together to spit out this fire danger rating that we use every day.
And the more that you tell me about your job, the more exciting it sounds. Once you get that rating established, how do you put that into use?
Well, you know, it depends on what that rating comes back, and it's not the same all across the country. There will be hot spots, so to speak, where it's fire danger is very high, and there'll be other places where it's low. If it's low, maybe no action is necessary because we just don't expect fires to begin in those areas. But where it's high, very high and extreme, well, now things have to be done to try to protect the forest from burning. So fire staff officers will start increasing their staffing. They'll move them to locations close to where they think the fires will be so they can get on that fire quick before it gets bad. The prevention officers and the PIOs will start telling the public, hey, be very careful out in the forest today. So that's some of the things that happen. And then if the weather's really bad, the Weather Service will put out red flag warnings to let everybody know that we've got critical conditions today.
So there's a lot of work that you're doing, and then a lot of work goes into telling people about it and making sure that everybody knows.
Oh, right. You know, it's all about communicating the impacts and the potential that's out there for catastrophic fire.
Okay. Well, off in the background here, behind Eric's truck, I see Amchat and the kids from Capitan Elementary. We're going to welcome them back here. Hey guys, how are you?
Great. Okay, let's get through here, and then everybody will come follow me. You guys can come on this way.
Yeah, come on in, come on in.
This is a pretty big class, and they've been off doing some work in the forest behind us, forest and grasslands. Hey guys, how are you?
Hey, life is good. Actually, let's let our teacher shine a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, how are you?
Good. What's your name?
Madison Romero.
Thanks so much, Miss Romero, for lending your class to us.
Oh, of course, they're awesome.
They are awesome. Well, what have you guys been learning about?
We have been learning about our forest, Lincoln National Forest. And I have 2 students here who would love to share with you what they've learned.
Wonderful. Were you guys talking about careers?
Yes, we learned about the fire prevention, fire suppression, and forest supervisor.
Nice. The forest supervisor, that's a very important role. Did you guys get a chance to play that?
Yes, we learned how the forest supervisor, forest fire prevention, and forest fire suppression did their jobs.
Very neat. You guys staying warm?
Yes.
Close to warm? We had a couple honest people who said, no, we're not very warm. I get it. I feel your pain. Well, so we've been talking to Tom Bird. Tom works a lot with the weather, and he does a lot of predicting. And we wanted to learn about how he predicts. And he has a lot of high-tech stuff, but he has some pretty cool low-tech ways.
Right.
Tom, if you have a ton of mist in the air right now, how do you figure out how much moisture is in the air?
Yeah, well, you know, we've got the remote automated stations that are permanently fixed in the forest all across the country. But if there's a fire somewhere that's not near there, we need to know what the weather is right where that fire is, because that's one of the critical drivers that makes a fire really get up and run fast, and it's dangerous. So we have, and Nick already told us about it when he was at his truck behind us, this kit called the Belt Weather Kit. And the reason why it's called that is because it's sitting right here on my belt, right? So it's portable. We can take it. All the firefighters walk around the woods with them while they're fighting the fire. With this, inside that Belt Weather Kit is this instrument right here. This is called a sling psychrometer. The reason why? You sling it, right? On it is 2 thermometers. One of them you see has a wick, the other one doesn't. So you take that wick and you wet it, all right? And then you put it in your hand. You saw how I spun it? I want one of you guys to spin it. Go ahead and just spin that. Now we don't have time to take an actual observation, but while it's spinning, that wick is evaporating, which cools that thermometer, okay? So thank you very much, you did great. So that cools the thermometer and gives us 2 different temperatures. We look at a chart, it tells us the relative humidity. If it's dry, That's not good for the fire. It means the fire will really be active.
Excellent. Well, you guys, thank you so much for lending your expertise and for hanging out with us today. We really appreciate it. Are you guys going to go somewhere warm?
We'll stay in the defensible space, though, right?
Good. Oh, you guys learned about defensible space. Wonderful. Okay, well, we're going to get to some more questions here, but you guys hang out and we'll see you in just a little bit, okay? All right. Well, Tom, before we go and take a few more questions, you showed us sort of the low-tech way of gathering relative humidity, but high-tech is a big part of what's going on. There's all sorts of satellites, and how does that work?
Well, you know, the science is always changing because need drives advancement. So now that more and more people are starting to move into areas that burn historically in a natural fashion over periods of time, well, now instead of just burning trees, now you've got people's homes and their lives and their property in harm's way. So now it's more critical than it ever has been before for us to get a really good handle on the fire danger. So now we're using satellites to look down from space to tell us what the vegetation is, to tell if it's dry. Also, you know, we get weather at discrete points, but we want to know what it is everywhere. So we're also using satellites to try to figure out what the weather is across the landscape. Instead of having just a one-day outlook, now we're expanding that to a 7-day outlook. So that way the fire managers can get some lead time and start to pre-position stuff and get things ready. So when there is a bad event expected, they can be ready for that. You got NASA involved. I mean, they're trying to help with the spatial resolution of weather information. And then you got universities. You got the Fire Science Lab up in Missoula for the Rocky Mountain Research Station. They've got teams of researchers and scientists that daily, that's what they're doing, is trying to figure out the best way to determine what the fire danger is going to be each day.
Sounds like preparation is a big part of prevention.
That's exactly right.
Well, I know we have some more questions, so you want to come over here and answer a couple with us? All right. Hey, Nick. Hey, Smokey. Well, what do we have? Who are we hearing from?
Well, we've had a flood of questions, really good ones, and they're getting answered online. But here's one of them that came in. It was just a student that asked about when we talk about fire containment, the percentage of containment, 50%, 10%. What does that all mean?
Oh, that's a great one. Eric?
That's a good question. Yeah, so when we have a fire, we look at the burned area, and our focus is to stop that fire. So what we need to do is we need to remove the burning material from the material that can burn. So what we do is we create a separation between the two that we call the line. So we're going to remove all the burned material from the material that can burn, and what we do is we take a percentage of the outlying perimeter of that fire, and each day, after each operational shift, we'll look at how much line we've put in that's expected to hold under all conditions and show that as contained line.
So that's containment. What's another question we have here, Nick?
We had a great question, I thought, was how many people does it take to put out a fire, like a fire team? And the second part of that question was, can women be firefighters?
Oh, we know that for sure. Here's Smokey's handler, Laura.
Sure, I can take that one. So it depends on how big the fire is. If it's a big fire, it's going to be a bigger team. If it's a smaller fire, we might be able to put out that fire with a smaller group of people. And of course women can be firefighters. We have lots of women firefighters in the Forest Service, and other agencies do as well.
Great. Well, thanks again. And we have another chance, so remember, keep getting in touch with us. Even if we're not answering your question here, we've got all the pros online. Nick is working, and Smokey's helping us out too. So keep sending your questions in. And here's another fun fact about Smokey. We wanted to bring back Fire Staff Officer Ryan Whitaker. Ryan, thanks for sticking around.
Sure, thanks for having me.
Here we're going to talk about what they call the whole spectrum of fire prevention.
Sure.
So I wanted to ask you about that and about this phrase that you guys have, which is plan for the worst, hope for the best.
When we plan for the worst, hope for the best, we have a lot of stuff that goes into it. The guys train year-long for the most part, you know, especially in the spring we have a big training season. So our crews come on in the spring, they have 80 hours of critical training that they have to do before they can even go on a fire. And then there's classes that go on all sorts of the year around that to get us ready for that. And then we work with the National Weather Service and our predictive services folks up in Albuquerque, kind of figure out where our fire danger is, where we need to be, what kind of crews we need to bring in. We'll bring in extra resources from up north to help us out a little bit if need be.
And you're hiring people throughout this whole process too?
Hiring is a nonstop event, it seems like anymore, yes. We're hiring our permanent staff right now, and then here in a couple weeks we'll go into temporaries, because most of our firefighters are temporaries, or a big chunk of them. So we'll just have seasonals coming on, and then they work 6 months out of the year, and then they go do something else for the other 6 months.
Well, what about all this equipment? Does it stay in the same place?
No, we move them around. We have stuff that's assigned like to the forest, like this big engine. It's
Okay.
one that's here for us all the time, but we send them off all over the country. They've gone to up north to Idaho, Wyoming, Montana, and then they go east sometimes to California. Wherever the need is, we'll send them out.
Okay. And not everybody has the same fire season. That's something that you were telling me.
Yeah, we don't. The Southwest fire season is early, so it's like from April, May into July, and then up north they start later than that. So it's kind of nice to have that Wyoming and Montana connection. We'll bring those guys down for our season, and then we return the favor and send our folks up.
Okay. As you guys prepare, do you have a checklist or a chain of events that you kind of use to work?
We do. Like I said, we bring on board all of our guys, and then we have readiness reviews that we have to do. We have stuff that we look into for what the weather situation is, where the fuel conditions are, whether we can do prescribed fires, whether we need to do some thinning work around. And thinning stuff kind of goes on all summer and then into the winter too. But whenever we have those windows, we try to get out and burn a little bit too.
Okay. There's a game that you guys play, the What If game. Explain that to me.
So the What If game is just kind of, if we get a fire up here on the Capitans, not necessarily today with the weather, but in a situation, what are we going to do with it? We have all kinds of options. We can, if it's a natural start, we can come out to the roads and make it a little bit bigger. If it's closer to resources or at risk, like the town of Ruidoso, which isn't too far from here, then it's probably a full suppression. We're going to go after it right away and put as much on it as we can to try to mitigate the size and the spread and impact the resources to homes and communities that way.
Okay, and so by thinking, what if this happens? If it happens, you're prepared.
Then we kind of gone through those exercises and we kind of know what we need to do.
Okay, so for the kids who are watching in classrooms, what can they do? How can they talk to their parents or the folks that they live with about preventing forest fires or just being ready?
The kids are a big part of it. They talked about defensible space a few minutes ago. Making sure the houses, all the stuff's around your house is cleared out, and not vegetation right up to it. All the wood is off the deck. Wood burning. The porches aren't right there up against the vegetation. So defensible space. And then when they're out camping, make sure that they put the fire out right. Make sure that, like we talked about earlier, the fire is devoid of vegetation around where the fire pit is.
Okay. We tend to think of fire sometimes as bad, but you used a term called prescribed burn.
Right.
Is that a good fire?
It is. A prescribed fire is one that we burn under our own conditions. It's management ignited. So it's under conditions that we use some of the tools that Tom talked about, where the weather and all that stuff, the fuel conditions. And then we have an identified area, a perimeter that we want to burn, and we go in under our conditions when it's not going to burn quite so intense. And then we can clean up the fuel on the ground and regenerate the forest.
Okay. And we saw that since Smokey began his campaign, human-caused fires are down 60%. But I've also heard that humans still cause most of the wildland fires.
Humans still cause a lot of the fires, and typically the ones that they cause are close to towns, close to structures. And so they're a little bit more damaging than just a lightning fire would be up on top of the Capitans here. You throw out your ashes outside your wood-burning stove in the middle of the wintertime, you kick up a fire, and it may spread, and obviously welding, chains, there's a whole gamut of stuff that can start a fire, but it's usually in a spot we don't necessarily want it when humans are causing them.
Sure. How important is it for the Forest Service and the state agencies, the local agencies, to communicate with each other?
Very important. It's an ongoing process. Again, it's kind of a year-round thing. We're talking all the time. Conference calls or just in person talking about what we're doing, what our plans are for the summer, prescribed fire-wise or whatever it is. If we have a lightning start that we want to manage, where are we going to use that at, those kinds of things, and so that everybody's on the same page. Nick knows what we're doing. We know where he's going to be going with fires if they get starts and that sort of thing. It's very important that we talk like that.
Okay. Well, speaking of communicating, we know we have some more questions.
All right.
Let's go answer a few. Back with Smokey and Laura and Benny and Eric and Tom. We have the whole gang here. What are we hearing, Nick?
Oh, we had a great question from Devin from the Zuni Elementary School in New Mexico. and he would like to know what do we use besides water to put out a wildfire?
Well, that's a very good question.
What do we use? Yeah.
We have, most of the time we use hand tools, so we'll use shovels and Pulaskis as another tool. It's an axe and a picks on one side, or a hoe. And we dig the hand line, we use bulldozers, we use the engines obviously. We have air tankers, so we use aerial retardant out of those air tankers, and then we also have helicopters that we can use.
Wow, so
there's a whole gamut of those things as well.
Excellent. What else, Nick?
There was a question that had to do with, since we're in such cool weather right now, they asked, is there ever fires in snow, and does that ever put them out? And so I could answer that question. We had a fire just last winter that there was snow still on the ground, but patches of open grass in between, and the fire was spotting from one open patch of grass to another through the snow. So yes, they can burn in the snow as long as the fuels are dry in between. Okay. And doesn't necessarily mean that just because there's snow on the ground that fire can't burn beneath the ground in the root systems and dead logs.
Okay, Tom and Eric, Nick mentioned spotting. Fires don't just burn in one continuous line. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure, for spotting, we see it pretty commonly on fires that are wind-driven. When you have fuels that are burning and you have wind pushing it, you'll have embers from the main fire and it'll push well out ahead of itself. And that becomes really problematic for us because we're not dealing with just one fire now, we're dealing with several fires, and it makes suppression on those fires very difficult. So definitely terrain can do that a little bit, but our main driving force for spotting is definitely wind.
And we can get some heavy winds, right, Tom?
Well, that's why on these large fires, we actually send IMETs, incident meteorologists, go out onto the fire with the crews. And that way they have someone to give them a heads up to know what the wind potential is for the day, which helps them to understand what kind of spotting potential there is with the fire.
Okay, and we have time for one more, I think.
Logan Ramirez, and I'm trying to find his spot here, but he asked a very good question about where do firefighters stay during a fire and how do they stay safe?
Oh yeah, we've seen all those pictures. Laura, where do they stay?
Sure, well, firefighters will stay usually in a fire camp, and that basically means that they're sleeping in a tent on the ground in between their 16-hour shift. So they are tired when they get back, they crawl into their tent, and they hit the hay.
I hear they eat a lot too, is that true?
Yes, they eat a lot. We have calorie limits that are provided to them, and I think it's 3,500 calories a day. It's quite a bit. They're working hard, they're burning those calories, and they need to replenish.
Absolutely. All right. Hey, thank you guys for answering all those questions. Keep them coming. We do still have our experts online, so we want to make sure that you get your chances to ask the questions through our website, through our Facebook page, and also through that email address that you've seen on your screen. Here's another fun fact about Smokey. And once again, thanks for all your questions. We have a few more things to do. One of them is a surprise for Smokey. Ryan, can you tell us about that?
Yeah, Smokey, we have a certificate of appreciation for your years of achievement, your years of service. We don't usually have old guys that stick around for 75 years, but you've stuck around and been with us for that long. So the Chief of the Forest Service, Chief Vicki Christensen, has signed this certificate for you for your 75 years of service. So I want to present that to you and thank you on behalf of the Chief and all the Forest Service for your service.
Woohoo! Way to go, Smokey. Well, there is so much more that we have to do, but the first thing we need to do is extinguish this fire. So Amchak, can you help us out with this?
We have a couple students that are going to help us out. Come on, we have all the equipment we need. Yep, we have all the equipment we need, and we're going to drown stir, drown.
Who's got my shovel?
Come on up.
Drown,
Ready?
stir, drown.
All right.
Okay.
There it is.
Whoa, that's a lot of smoke.
That's the
stir it up a
first
little bit.
drown. Let's get it stirred. We have a couple of human thermometers who are going to go and check and make sure to see if it's already
Let's
cool.
do one more drown, right?
Watch out. It's going to smoke up again.
So we've seen one drown, one stir, and now here's another drown.
See how hot those things get? Woo! Okay, stir it up one more time for us.
I still hear it sizzling, so do we need to check with our hand yet? Yeah, probably not. And that's some excellent stirring you're doing there.
Definitely. That's a lot of work.
It's worth it. It's worth it. We want to make sure the fire is out.
Don't have to call Eric for an escape campfire.
That would be a human-caused wildfire, wouldn't
It would be a human-caused wildfire.
There we go. So is this out yet?
Let's check
Probably
thermometers.
not. Human thermometers. Okay, how do we check? Ooh, good work. Backs of the hands. What do you think, Smokey? Do we need to do a little more work on this when we're done? We do. Okay. Well, we're going to make sure to do that. We want to thank you guys for joining us. There is still so much more that you can learn about all of this. You can go to Smokey Bear's website, of course, Smokey Bear Live. You can also go to smokeybear.com. We also want to know what you thought of how we did today. We want you to give us a grade. So please fill out the evaluation on that part of our website. And there are other national events celebrating Smokey's birthday and wildfire prevention message. Smokey is going to the Capitol. You're going to be part of the Capitol Christmas tree celebration. And I heard this morning on the radio that the Capitol Christmas tree is actually from New Mexico. So that's pretty cool. Smokey will be keeping an eye on that. You can go to smokeybear.com, of course, to find out more. And also, kids, you can send a letter to Smokey. You can send it to Smokey Bear, Washington, D.C., and the zip code is 20252. And there's kind of a story behind that. 1952 was the start of the Junior Ranger program. Thousands of children were riding to Smokey Bear, and they wanted to become Junior Rangers. In 1965, get this, Smokey got so much mail that the U.S. Postal Service gave him his own zip code, 20252. The only other person to have their own zip code, the President of the United States. That's pretty cool. So again, you can write to Smokey, just send it to Smokey Bear, Washington, D.C., 20252. Smokey gets mail from all over the U.S. and in fact from many other countries. You've already accomplished so much, Smokey, but the work is far from over. Wildfire prevention remains crucial, and Smokey needs your help. His catchphrase, you've heard it all over, only you can prevent wildfires. That's much more than just a catchphrase. It's a way for you to take care of the world around you. We want to thank everyone for joining us right now. All of our partners, of course, the U.S. Forest Service, Benny Long from yeah, there she is over there by the truck. Hey, Benny, from Smokey Bear Historical Park. Adolph Zamora with the Taos Snowballs. Tom Bird from the National Weather Service. And of course, Smokey Bear. And our students from Capitan Elementary. Miss Romero's class, hi. Thanks all for coming to us. Again, we want to first say happy birthday to Smokey. Happy 75th birthday, Smokey. Happy birthday, Smokey. All right, and this is the big part, kids. We have to get this right, all right? Smokey's catchphrase. Remember, only you can prevent wildfires.